Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a pretty radical philosophy, one that basically declares war on ambition itself. It's a worldview where striving isn't a virtue, but maybe the ultimate act of foolishness.
So this all kicks off not with some deep philosophical question, but with a massive declaration, a full-on rejection of striving from a worldview called the Great Evening. The whole idea here is that all our exhausting effort is just a way to deny the absolute, static truth of the void. So, how does this philosophy even introduce its core ideas? Well, it begins not with some heavenly prologue, but down in an infernal council, a place where the final accounts of humanity are being settled once and for all.
At its heart, this is really a philosophy of finality. The goal isn't to become more, but to embrace this universal exhaustion it calls the long tiredness and just cease the struggle of becoming altogether.
And get this, the central figure here isn't a symbol of evil, but of absolute stasis. This reimagined Satan represents the profound peace of a universe that has finally stopped trying. He's the ultimate embodiment of the last man.
But of course, this total stillness has a challenger, the figure of Faust. He's the relentless striver, the last man standing, who still clings to what this philosophy calls the glittering lie of progress.
And that brings us right to the philosophy's main ideological opponent, that heroic ideal of the overman, or the Übermensch.
From the perspective of the Great Evening, this ideal of a Superman isn't some noble goal for humanity to aspire to. Nope. Instead, it's presented as this beautiful but totally exhausting illusion. The most beautiful lie born from our own fatigue.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Look at how this philosophy just flips famous concepts on their head. The celebrated will to power, for instance, gets reframed as a frantic will to distraction, a desperate attempt to stay busy so we don't have to confront the dark. Think of the endless scroll or the constant pressure of hustle culture. It's like a treadmill we run on, terrified of what happens if we stop.
And this leads to a crucial belief. All those paths of progress are an illusion. Every journey of self-improvement, every attempt to break new ground, ultimately just leads you right back where you started. The horizon is a circle.
This really illustrates the philosophy's core view on ambition. Striving doesn't conquer fate, it simply walks you down a predestined path toward an inevitable, indifferent end that was waiting for you all along.
This philosophy presents its own journey of the spirit, but it is not an ascent to greatness. Oh no. Instead, it's a descent, a pitiful collapse backward into the universal exhaustion of the long tiredness.
So instead of the spirit growing stronger and more free, it just collapses. It falls backward through three distinct stages of disillusionment, moving from all that potential to just total exhaustion.
The journey begins with the death of wonder. The spirit realizes the whole game of life is repetitive, maybe even rigged. Its innocence sours into cynicism, and all that creative potential just withers on the vine.
Next up, rebellion is shown to be a totally hollow victory. The lion screams its holy no and wins its freedom, only to find out that freedom without purpose is actually terrifying. It doesn't get captured by an enemy, it's captured by its own empty freedom.
And finally, the spirit just collapses into the shape of the broken camel, but it's not carrying the weight of great values anymore. It's only carrying the burden of its own exhaustion. It becomes the last man, seeking tiny pleasures and asking only, what is easiest?
So what does culture even look like in a world that embraces this philosophy? The sources describe it as a prelude on the stagnant stage, basically a theater that's designed for the tired.
The manager of this theater isn't trying to challenge the audience or make them think. The goal is just comfort, to pacify those big existential questions and provide a gentle escape from the burden of meaning.
And the poet, who's now kind of a soothsayer for this worldview, argues that the most honest art is actually no art at all. It's just the silence that remains when all ambition, all striving has finally been extinguished.
Even entertainment becomes a reflection of this void. The clown's purpose isn't to make people laugh at clever jokes, but to make them laugh at meaninglessness itself. The greatest performance is a trick with no reveal.
And this is the end point of culture in this worldview, a collective agreement to simply stop trying, to sit together in the dark and find solace in a shared refusal to strive.
This brings us to the philosophy's final, and maybe its most challenging, proposition, a radical new definition of happiness. a cure for the fever of striving.
This philosophy explicitly rejects the sun, the symbol of life, energy, and striving, calling it a liar. It tells us instead to embrace the moon, which represents a cold, reflected, and finished state of being. It's the honest witness to our exhaustion.
So the crucial point is this: the ultimate blessing isn't achieving your goals, but being so exhausted you no longer have any. It's the peace that comes from being finished, the profound relief of finally being empty.
And so, this entire philosophy leaves us with a final, really provocative question. It's a question that doesn't just challenge our ambitions, but the very assumption that we should have them in the first place.